Listeners, readers, I'm so glad you've tuned in. Welcome to the Fox page where we dive deep into the very best books. You'll come away with a better understanding of the text at hand, all while learning to read everything a little better. As always, the lecture today will be presented in 3 parts. In the first part, we will talk about why I think it's a great idea that you read this book. We'll talk a bit about the biography of the author, and then we will dive into the text. In the second installment, this time we will be talking about structure and pacing. In the last part, in the last third of the lecture, we'll be talking about character arc, humor, and then the close of the novel. So I've built a little suspense here because I did not tell you what novel we'll be looking at for all of these. So I'm going to do a big reveal, which is today we are talking about Goodbye Vitamin by Rachel Khong. So this is a book that honestly I bought because I was in the bookstore and the cover was so appealing to me. It just called out to me. And then I got to the checkout and my trusty checkout guy, who I know so well at my local independent bookstore, Kepler's, shout out to Kepler's Books in Menlo Park. He said it's selling like, he did not say hotcakes. That's what just popped into my head. But he said it's really selling. So I thought, well, I gotta get in touch with what everybody is reading. So we were gonna just dive right into why I think, now having read the book, that I think you also should read the book. First of all, the cover is amazing. The colors, these are not even my palette. Like these are usually not colors that call out to me. And for whatever reason, they really did. I was intrigued by the title itself. I also really enjoy this font. I enjoy this combination of fonts. Everything about this was just really intriguing to me. But then I will say, as always, that I wasn't going to purchase it until I read that first paragraph. And there is a third line in that first paragraph, which we will get to soon, that sold me. I was like, okay, I'm in, which is always there's a little frisson, a little thing that happens when I'm reading where I know I'm really sucked in and the chances are very good that I will love the novel. And that is exactly what happened with Goodbye Vitamin. Okay, it was also, once I dug a little deeper, it was named a best book of 2017. Apparently it came out a long time ago. I bet it just came out in paperback though. It was a best book of the year in 2017 for NPR, for Oprah, whose taste I really enjoy in literature for the most part, the San Francisco Chronicle, Vogue magazine, of which I am a subscriber and a longtime lover, and just really it did very well in that year. It was developed it's going to be developed, or it began development in 2021, which who knows where those pandemic era projects lay. But it is Constance Wu who is involved. I don't know if Constance Wu is acting or what role she has, but I'm really looking forward to more news about the adaptation of Goodbye Vitamin. So that's a good segue into our bio of Rachel Khong. She's not someone I knew much about. She's a relatively, this is sort of a debut novel for her, but she was born in 1985, I believe in Malaysia. She has a Malaysian Chinese family, but she grew up in Rancho Cucamonga here in LA. It's 37, not here in LA, here in California. I'm like 300 miles from LA. Apparently, Rancho Cucamonga is 37 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, which I don't know why I have that written down so exactly here, but in case you're wondering. Also, Rancho Cucamonga is such an entertaining thing to say and hopefully to hear that you're enjoying hearing that Rancho Cucamonga is 37 miles from downtown LA. So she studied English at Yale, smart cookie by all kind of connotations of a Yale education. She then went on to get an MFA at the University of Florida, and she worked with Paget Powell, who is a writer. I have not read a lot of Paget Powell, but I do remember reading, I have a very positive association. You guys know I have a really, really bad memory, but I do have a very positive association with Paget Powell. It might be just because the name is so cool. I don't know if Paget Powell is a I don't know if that's a man or a woman, doesn't matter. But I actually think maybe Paget Powell was involved with McSweeney's with that whole thing because Rachel Khong married Eli Horowitz, who is he was a former editor at McSweeney's. So those of you who don't know McSweeney's, it's one of these very erudite, kind of very brainy, very hip, at least it was, maybe 10 years ago. I don't even know if it still exists, but it's kind of that Dave Eggers, very postmodern, kind of very hip literary magazine era. And Eli Horowitz was involved with that and is now married to Rachel Khong. In 2011, Rachel Khong moved to San Francisco and was the magazine editor, I believe, of Lucky Peach, which is the magazine for Momofuku, which is a very famous restaurant, if you don't know it, in San Francisco. In 2018, I was interested to learn that in 2018, Rachel founded a workspace, a co-worker space that was women-centered in the Mission District in San Francisco called The Ruby, which I love that. I think probably her timing was maybe not what it could have been, because setting up a co-worker space in 2018, I mean, maybe at the very beginning, she had a good couple years. I don't really know. But I'm actually very happy that she didn't just decide to become a runner of a co-working space, because my guess is that she really focused on her writing and turned out, actually, she had already published this book by 2017. But regardless, I'm just very happy she wrote this book because it is excellent. Okay, we're going to dive in. So this, again, the cover is really, really alluring to me. I have in my notes here, I'm a big fan of the Kardashians, and I have in my notes, all capitals, Khloe Kardashian next to blurbs, which I don't remember what that means. I actually pulled this lecture together a few weeks ago, and I have no idea why I have Khloe Kardashian written there. I imagine, because I follow Khloe on Instagram, I'm imagining maybe she endorsed this book, which I don't think of the Kardashians as being like a real literary light in the darkness, but I also think maybe that's what that was. So bit of a mystery there, but the rest of the blurbs are very impressive. We have Miranda July weighing in, who's an incredible writer. We also have Lauren Groff. So she's got some real heavy duty writers who are endorsing her writing and this book in particular. I also really love the title. So Goodbye Vitamin, when you have goodbye and then the comma vitamin, it means that you are addressing a vitamin. So it's a punctuation mark that I love here, because it really, I think everybody intuits that, but it's important to recognize that it's like goodbye vitamin. You're anthropomorphizing the vitamin. You're making it. You're sort of giving it ears. You're giving it the capability of hearing you say goodbye to it, which I loved. And in my mind, I was like, who is this vitamin? Is there a person in the book named Vitamin? Because that would be amazing. Is it a vitamin? It was a very intriguing title to me, really unusual, and I think really captivating. There are trends in titles, like The Shoemaker's Wife, or there were all those things with like the definite article the, and then some sort of possessive noun, and then another noun. I'm happy that trend seems to be, maybe, I don't know, it's still out there for sure, but I'm really appreciative of the unique nature of Goodbye Vitamin. It was one of the reasons why I picked this book up and decided to read the first paragraph. Importantly, also, when we think about vitamin, if you are paying attention, as I will tell you is the most important thing for reading, as well as you can read, we should know what a vitamin is. I think everyone knows, like, essentially what vitamins are, but I took it a bit further. And what I will tell you is, in my sleuthing, in my chemistry that I was doing, I learned that vitamins are necessary compounds, but they are not synthesized by the body, which I think is so interesting. So if you are a really great writer and you have a great title like this, it's going to carry nuance. And in fact, it does here. So I love this idea of these vitamins, which we're going to look at the actual, when this phrase comes up in the novel. It's very impactful if you also are thinking about the fact that a vitamin is a very necessary compound, but it has to be taken in. It's not organically part of the body. Also really made me feel like I got to get that vitamin B, I got to get the D, the A, the K, the E, the fat soluble ones. Like I gotta really do the vitamins, because apparently you cannot synthesize them in your body. D with the sun, but that's kind of a different thing. I also took a quick little Latin etymological journey with vitamin. and realize that vitamin, so vita comes from the Latin for life, and amine is it's an ending, it's an English ending which means acid. It's like a chemistry thing. So Latin, so the Latin together with that chemical ending basically means the acid of life. So there's a certain importance that is being imbued, or is being sort of, this word vitamin is imbued with this importance, which is just a beautiful nuance to carry forward as we look at the novel. Okay, so we're going to look at the first instance of this phrase, goodbye vitamin. I love it when titles, when they pop up verbatim in a text. It's just like, talk about a frisson. It's very satisfying for me. On page 4 here up at the top, there's a little space break, and then our narrator says, on my way to the bathroom, I catch my mother shouting, no, 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 you're expensive, to a vitamin she's dropped. Ginkgo, I think. So we don't know this yet, but it's going to become very important, this idea of ginkgo. So ginkgo, I did a little more, archaeological digging here. It turns out ginkgo is a living fossil, which I don't even really know what that means, but it sounds very cool. It also speaks, I think, to longevity. It speaks to a tradition of Chinese medicine, because ginkgo biloba is one of those like ancient and very effective. I mean, a lot of those herbs are very effective. I don't know if ginkgo biloba is as effective as the trend like a decade ago would have you believe, but it is one of those very well-known ancient remedies, which I think we carry on because they are effective. It is very importantly an aid for memory. So it's, this is a book that is very, very occupied with the idea of memory, not only of retaining our memories and losing our memories, but also of making memory. So this idea of ginkgo biloba, in this case, ginkgo, is very important here. And I love this introduction to the mom, this idea of the mom, the triple no here that has an exclamation mark. No, 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 it's exactly that. You cannot read this dialogue without reading it correctly, like with that kind of urgency, that like, no, 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 that kind of a thing. And this, you're expensive, another exclamation mark. I love, again, this anthropomorphizing of the vitamin. She's losing something that she feels she can speak to, something that is, again, sort of turned into something that can hear, that's sentient. So this importance of it, but also the mother as being somewhat frugal, and as having a sense of humor, as being someone who is, talking out loud to vitamins. So we have that on page 4, and then really beautifully toward the end of the novel on 172, we have another instance of the vitamin and of this exact phrase popping back up again. And it's really beautiful because this is the father. So first we had the mother at the beginning, and now we have the father at the end. It's this really beautiful balance for this, not only for our narrator Ruth, but also for the reader, because this is a marriage we will find soon that is a little on the rocks, and it's, heading toward, just sort of degeneration, because the father, the husband, is losing his memory. But there is this nice sense of the book being anchored by the mother and the father. So on page 172, today you held your open hand out and I shook the pills into it, same as every day. Fish oil, magnesium, vitamins D, C, and A, ginkgo biloba. Hello, water, you said, holding the glass against the moonlight and shaking the pills like they were dice you were ready to roll in your other hand. Goodbye, vitamin. So I love this so much. I love the fact that that they're doing this together. At this point in the novel, the father and the daughter have really, really, throughout the novel, you see this very nice kind of coming together for the two of them. That's really very sweet. And she's doing a lot of different things with him, and she's taking on this caretaking role. But at this point, he's still funny, he's still witty. And I love this, hello, water, goodbye, vitamin. For my money, it's a little bit too far. There's a little bit too much text in between the two. I think when you read it, it's more because of how it shows on the page. The paragraph begins with hello, water, and ends with goodbye, vitamin. And this is a paragraph that has space breaks before and after. So visually, they really balance each other. I think when you read it aloud, there's quite a bit of text in the middle, which kind of has you lose this idea of hello, water, goodbye, vitamin. But there's also a very nice resonance because of the moonlight. There's a little echo of like Goodbye, the Goodbye Moon book, which I think a lot of us are familiar with, and Goodbye Anything, especially tied together with the moonlight, is going to, with a father-daughter context, is going to evoke that kind of nice kind of fairy tale feel or picture book feel. I also love this detail of him holding the vitamins and shaking them in his hand as if they were dice. I mean, this is a book that is very much about how unpredictable the beginning stages of Alzheimer's is, and how you can have a good day, you can have a bad day, you can have what seems like a precipitous decline, you can have plateaus. So this idea of rolling the dice is very apt, and it's the kind of detail that really brings these two to life. I was just absolutely just kind of marveling at the way she brought the father figure to life. He's someone who's really flawed. I mean, he's someone who has not been faithful. He's not been particularly, sort of respectful of the mother. There have been a lot of divisions and some strife, and he is someone who seems to be, sort of philandering with women who are much younger than he is. So there are all sorts of reasons why we could really see him as deeply flawed, which he is in those ways, and yet he ends up being so sympathetic. And part of it is the descriptions that we receive from our narrator, Ruth. Okay, we are going to go back to the beginning of the book. That was all about the title. Everything we've talked about so far is just about the title. So we're going to go back. We're not going to look at the blurbs other than just mark the fact that they are very impressive. And then we are coming to this dedication. The dedication says, "For my parents." So it's interesting that Rachel Khong, in an interview that I listened to, she's really articulate and had some very interesting things to say about first-person narration as a woman. And I think that this dedication to her parents, this dedication here, "For my parents," there is, to me, I think she's inviting a little bit of this idea of conflating Rachel and Ruth. There's also the name, there's a little bit of, they're both biblical. Ruth, by the way, means like pitiful despair. It also means friend or friendship or compassionate person. But Ruth is, that is a bummer. Like, that is a name that is, this is a person, our narrator, Ruth, really is, she's at kind of a pitiful moment in her life. She and her doctor friend, there's a lot of talking about sort of how low can she get and different strategies for sort of bringing herself up after this breakup that she's had. So the idea of Ruth as being a name that is synonymous with grief and pitifulness is so apt. I also really, again, I like the kind of resonance with the biblical stuff, but I will say that Ruth and Rachel do, in my mind, they are inviting the kind of conflation that you sort of, in my mind, I think we feel like we know Rachel Khong, and she resisted that in the interview. What she said when the interviewer said to her, "You said that Ruth was an exaggerated version of yourself," and it was awesome because Rachel kind of pushed back and was like, "Not so much." Like, she literally said, "Not so much." And then she said that the novel that she wrote was born out of a breakup that she was suffering at that time, but she never moved home to her family. By the way, I'm filming this in my daughter's bedroom. Oh, and I'm also, for those of you who are watching the lecture, I'm wearing a little dress that I knitted. I did not knit it up for this book, although the green of this dress, it's like a dark jade kind of green. It is, for some reason, it really spoke to me. I was thinking it was looking good with the title, with the cover art, but in my mind, the cover art was green, not this kind of turquoise. But oh well, here we are. So I'm in my daughter's room because, she's not going to move home. She lives in New York City. She loves it. I don't know if she's ever coming back to California. This person, our Ruth and our Rachel, both went east for college. I actually don't know that Ruth went east, but she came at least up to Northern California and then ended up back in Southern California. So this is someone who has come back to California, back to her roots. But Rachel, as opposed to Ruth, never moved back in with her family. She does not have a father who has Alzheimer's, although her grandmother did have Alzheimer's, and I think a lot of the book is based on her grandmother's sort of decline. She is not mixed race, so a lot of the book is not, it's not preoccupied, but there is a really beautiful subtext about the mixed race experience in the United States. And again, that is not something that Rachel herself personally experienced. And she is not an ultrasound technician and never has been. I really enjoyed that. And actually, it was a great profession for Rachel to choose for our character Ruth because of some of the symbolism that we're going to take a look at. Okay. Oh, and the interesting thing that Rachel said in that interview, there were many interesting things, but one of them was that her feeling is that women in particular are sort of subject to that kind of conflation. That when readers are reading a book by a woman author and it is in the first person and it is a woman narrator, that the temptation to conflate author and narrator is stronger with women. And I think there's some truth in that. My kind of nuance that I would lay over that is the fact that our kind of default, which has been the case for millennia, I think, unfortunately, has been that the sort of the generic narrator, for the most part, is sort of male. I mean, I think we think of the generic, if you're reading a newspaper article and someone pressed you to say, who's writing this, it's that sort of very writing that's supposed to be very kind of anodyne and with an invisible narrator. That invisible narrator, in fact, has a very distinct, verbiage and a very distinct syntax. And I think it is the syntax and the vocabulary of like an educated white dude. So I think when you have a woman writing, there is a temptation, because it's a different, and a woman narrating, both of those things happening, there is a sense of it being different enough that the reader's sort of focusing on what, like whether or not there is that conflation, and whether or not, also maybe because women, if you're talking about a domestic novel like this, where a lot of it is happening in the home, a lot of it is about domestic activities, a lot of it is about family, which are themes that I think for better and for worse and worse, we associate with women in the home. But I love that idea. I love the fact that she brought up this notion that women are sort of more often subjected to this kind of conflation. Okay, now we're going to finally dive in. Our timing is perfect here. We're going to dive in to the first page. So when we open to the text itself, there's no kind of subtitles. There's no, not subtitles, like subheadings, and no chapter titles. It just goes straight from the dedication for my parents to the text itself. And we begin with December 26. And true to form, I skipped right over that. I don't know what it is about my brain. I think I'm just so hungry to get to the text. But that was my bad, because it's actually very significant. December 26th, of course, being the day after Christmas. And I actually have a godchild whose birthday it is after. That's the birthday of this godson of mine. And it is a bummer. Like the 26th of December, as a parent, you're psyched. As a parent, you're just like, whew, but for all of us, it's not a great day. There's all that letdown after the holidays, or you're exhausted, or you're so tired of your family, or whatever the thing is. So it's starting with a day that's actually really inauspicious. It's a bummer of a day. So, and kind of universally so, as long as you're talking about a book in this sort of Judeo-Christian, or not even Judeo, in the Christian world, or at least in the United States. Honestly, there's so much hubbub around Christmas that I think most people are not totally immune to December 26th. So we dive right into this story in a way that I really did find so compelling. Tonight, a man found Dad's pants in a tree lit with Christmas lights. The stranger called and said, "I have some pants belonging to a Howard Young." "Well, shit," I said. I put the phone down to verify that Dad was home and had pants on. He was, and did. Yesterday, on Mom's orders, I'd written his name and our number in permanent marker onto the tags of all his clothes. Apparently what he's done in protest is pitched the numbered clothing into trees, up and down Euclid, his slacks and shirts hanging from the branches. The downtown trees have their holiday lights in them, and this man who called while driving noticed the clothes illuminated. This is such a strong opening. It's very, very good. So a couple of things that I love right away. This tonight is such a kind of bold way to start a novel, the whole entire thing, because it's so immediate, and we know that we're in the present tense. We know that this is a story that is being told. We're being dropped right into like the action of this, which is really it's promising a lot, and she actually delivers, which is impressive because it is a domestic novel about a father's decline from Alzheimer's. Like on paper, it's a little hard to understand how you're going to be dropped into something that's really like full of action. Not that taking care of a parent is not full of drama. It is, but it's a drama that I think has to be very carefully curated, or else it's just so yucky to hear about. So this idea of tonight, and tonight a man found dad's pants. So I love the capitalization of the dad here, because what that means is it's like it's her dad. But if she said my dad and it were a lowercase, there would be much more distance between the reader. So I think you understand what I'm saying. When she says a man found dad's pants, it's as if she's talking either to a family member or a very close friend. I mean, even a close friend, you might say, a guy found my dad's pants. But if you say a guy found dad's pants, it's like that person is really on the inner circle, which is, I mean, I think you've maybe done that thing with a sibling where you'd be like, I talked to my mom this morning, and then you have to laugh because you're like, it's also your sibling's mom. It's the reverse of that. It's not, alienating yourself. It's creating incredible intimacy just with a capital. I mean, that is the miracle of grammar, really. So tonight, a man found dad's pants in a tree lit with Christmas lights. So there's also an absurdity that we're getting right from the top that is so indicative of what we are going to find. And it's humor and it's pathos. It's like the perfect beginning to what we are going to explore throughout the work. So the stranger called, I love this evocation of the stranger right away. It's not a neighbor. It's not, a man. It's a stranger, because there is this idea of people becoming strange, whether it's because of a romantic breakup or whether it's because you have Alzheimer's and you are losing all of your memories. So this idea of estrangement, or if your husband's cheating on you and you need some space from him, all of that causes estrangement. So the idea of stranger right up at the top is just genius. It's subtle, but it is so good. Okay, and then the way that she does the interrogatives in that sentence, I have some pants belonging to a Howard Young. It's, again, there's no way to read that. Like, the very best dialogue is such that any way you read it, you can't read it wrong. Like, there's only one way to read it, and it's the perfect way. So the fact that it's this double interrogative here is exactly the way somebody would call and just be like, I have some pants belonging to Howard Young. The important thing here too, so Howard means brave heart, which is, I mean, for my money, it's kind of, or in my opinion, it's kind of a not awesome name. I hope your name is not Howard. But once I found out it meant Braveheart, not only was that more significant, and I think there's some irony here, because yes, this man is sort of bravely facing his diagnosis, but also he's a man who is requiring a lot of courage by the people around him. All of the graduate students who create the class, and all of the sort of good cheer on the part of his family. All of that is a lot of courage on the people around him. Also, he's kind of a cad and kind of a rake. I'm really digging up some old terms here, but not really a Braveheart so much as like a guy who's sneaking around on his wife, which is shitty. Okay, and then young also is very important, because this is a disease that is associated with aging. So you have this idea of a Braveheart who is young, when in fact this is someone who is will become not less brave, but like isn't going to be able to be markedly brave, and is definitely someone who is not super young. But the next line was the one that sold me. I was already, at this point when I was reading it, standing in the bookstore, I was like, this first paragraph's pretty great. And then well, shit, I said. So good. I mean, it says so much about the attitude of this person, everything about this person, about how they're thinking about the situation, about their some levity, but also like they're going to be a little profane, and they're going to be honest, and they're also going to just be matter of fact about things. So I found that I don't know exactly why it was so compelling, but that was the point when I was like, I'm buying this. I'm buying this book, which is great. So, and then if we go down a little bit further, I just want to touch on a couple of things at the end here. Up and down Euclid, his slacks and shirts hanging from branches. So Euclid, if there's one proper noun in, this first chunk of this novel, you want to pay attention. I mean, there's another proper noun because Howard Young is a proper noun, but Euclid, I believe, is the only other one. And Euclid is he is an ancient Greek mathematician. And importantly, he did geometry. I don't know if you remember Euclidean geometry. I loved geometry. I was not an algebra person, but I loved geometry. And it was so satisfying to actually look at the definition of geometry. I actually did remember that Euclid had to do with geometry, but I did not know this excellent definition. It is a branch of math concerned with the relations of points, lines, surfaces, and solids. It's so beautiful. This idea that they would live on Euclid Street. Well, I actually don't know. I mean, I assumed they lived on Euclid Street. At least they lived near enough for him to be scattering his clothing. You also wonder, I mean, part of the question here is like, wait, why is he taking off his clothes? Or why is he carrying his clothes around and strewing them everywhere? But it's very important that this is happening on a street that is concerned with points and connections and lines. And you can remember some of the stuff about geometry. It's about circles and it's about rays, where you have a point that goes off into nowhere. That's not a line, it's a ray where it just is a little cute arrow, meaning it's just going off on its thing. I mean, I think it's a metaphor here that is or it's a symbol also that I think is very effective. Again, very subtle, but very, very effective. Okay, so quickly before we end this very, very first part here, I really also love the December 26th thing once I went back and paid attention to it. But I also enjoy the fact that the entire novel is structured as this journal, essentially, that she is keeping. And it makes for some really interesting structuring, which we're going to look at soon. But I also really enjoy, frankly, how much white space there is on the page. It's a book that you read fairly quickly. And there are these really sort of delectable chunks that allow, again, for lots of nuance and lots of weaving together in terms of structure, but also for a very satisfying, it feels light, this book, which is good because it's about a topic that is very dark. Okay, so thank you for joining me for part 1 of our 3-part lecture on Rachel Khong's incredible Goodbye Vitamin. Tune in for the second part when we will talk about we're talking about structure and pacing. Okay, and maybe arc. Maybe the character arc, depending on how far we get. So join me for the second part, and thank you for tuning in.